Conti, I see you all here. You're going to have to, if you could undo the little microphone. I did mute you just for a second so I could go over the...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. I have Mr. Conti present. Ms. Corrigan.
Here.
Ms. Corrigan is present. Ms. Moyer.
Here.
Ms. Moyer is present. Mr. Jennings. Mr. Jennings. And Ms. Moore, we're getting a lot of feedback on your line. I don't know if it's right or something, but it's all that. That's a lot better. Mr. Jennings. We do, and Mr. Conlon is here. We do have a quorum. We will proceed. First would be the oaths of office. We'll swear Mr. Jennings in when he gets here. Ms. Moyer, I'm going to administer the oath of office as the city clerk. I am entitled under the statute. I was sworn in this morning by the Legislative Counsel for the City Council, Mr. Edward Kaloji. This is the oath of office. If all the commissioners could raise their hands. Raise your right hand, please. I, please state your name.
I, Jill Moyer.
And I got you, Mr.
Anthony Conti.
Do solemnly swear and affirm
Do solemnly swear and
confirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
and I
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same and to the governments
to the same
and to the
government
government
established in the United States and in this state,
established in the United States and in this
in
state,
this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God,
so
so
help me God.
as a Trenton Ward Commissioner.
As a Trenton Ward Commissioner.
Commissioner.
You are now all sworn in. Mr. Conti, are there any nominations to elect a chairman?
I'd like to nominate yourself there, Mr. Clerk. I would make that in the form of a motion to nominate Mr. Conlon as our chair.
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I abstain. Ayes have it. There is a chairman. We will now proceed to new business. This is the retention of experts. There was a previous meeting for the Board of Elections appointing an expert. And we can just accept the gracious offer of the Board of Election and the commissioners for graciously providing really expert engineers to help us with this process. I make a motion to approve the engineering firm as previously approved by the Board of Elections.
I will second that.
All in favor of adopting?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. The engineering firm, Mr. Zielinski's firm, is retained. We would now proceed. Mr. Zielinski, are you prepared for your presentation, sir?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Zielinski, would you like presentation rights, or do you want me to put items up as you are prepared to go to them?
If you have access to them, Matt, I prefer you to put them up.
That's fine. Just let me know. This is, and Mr. Zielinski, could you please introduce yourself for the record and your firm?
Yes, if you can all see me, I just turned on my video. My name is Kevin Zielinski. I'm with Remington and Vernick Engineers. I head up the GIS CAD division that specializes in municipal, county, and statewide mapping. Utilize GIS and CAD capabilities to perform this, along with specialized software for precinct mapping. I have been involved with census rewording and redistricting since 1990. I have a past history with the Mercer County Board of Elections and with Trenton. We were involved in the 2010 census and reward map. We did receive, albeit, and if I could digress a bit, Matt, as I informed at our December 8th meeting to all the clerks of Mercer County, the Census 2020 reallocated population data was released officially on September 23rd of 2021. Typically, New Jersey gets it usually by the end of March of the following year after the census is taken, which would have been March of 2021 after the census 2020 numbers were certified. However, because of the pandemic, because of the strange times we're in, the rest of the country gets all their data in September, which is when New Jersey also received it. Typically, Jersey does get it early because we have early primaries. We have early. Excuse me?
Please proceed, sir.
In addition, generally the census data is parsed out by county, so Mercer would have gotten just their data along with the other 20 counties in New Jersey. It was issued not only in September, when it's usually issued in March, but it was also issued on a statewide basis. So we took the liberty of parsing out the Mercer County information and Trenton specifically, along with other counties within the state. Also, I want to remind the ward commissioners that New Jersey passed a law where they would reallocate that population data. And what that means by definition, and this is why it was ultimately certified on the 23rd of September, is they took, and I'll use South Ward and Trenton as a great example. Anybody that's incarcerated, because Title 40 and census is by population, prisoners or incarcerated people are counted as part of that population. Therefore, you have the prison in South Ward, which, let's just say for sake of argument, you had an additional 2,000 incarcerated folks in South Ward. They would count in South Ward as part of the population census, which would give an unfair advantage or a skewed advantage, let me put it that way, for the other 3 wards in the city. What this law did was it took the last known address for those incarcerated folks and put them back where they lived before they were incarcerated. So in other words, let's say 50 people actually lived in Trenton. They would stay there. Let's say 1,000 lived in Atlantic City. They would be put back there, and so on and so forth. But conversely, anybody else within the state that lived in Trenton that may have been incarcerated in a penitentiary outside of Mercer County would be counted inside of Mercer County and Trenton specifically if that's where they once lived. So it was a put it back, and then anybody that might be coming in. So those reallocated numbers are what has been disseminated to the ward commissioners. It's what our map scenarios are based on, and it is what was published and made available from the Division of Elections for the state on September 23rd. So that kind of brings us to today. We ran an analysis, and Matt, if you wouldn't mind, there is a map in there called current census map. It's called Trenton 2020 Census Current. If you would please share that screen with everybody. You should not have to download it. It should open. And actually,
There we go.
There we go.
It wants to download. It's probably our firewall, but that's all right.
No worries. Okay. So if you notice, folks, this is your current city ward map for Trenton. I also have a table that is enclosed within this map, and it's in the upper left corner. And based on Title 40 statutory requirements, thank you, sir, we are required to be with 10% or less deviation between any 2 wards in any municipality statewide that might have wards. In this case, Mercer only has Trenton. So with those reallocated population numbers I just defined, Trenton currently has, after 2020 census, 89,485 people that live in the city. You have four wards, North, South, East, and West Ward. The current population for that 89,485 breaks down as follows. East Ward has 24,701. North Ward has 21,619. South Ward has 22,633, and the West Ward has 20,532. Now, when you take that total 89,485 and you divide it by the 4 wards, you get an average per ward of 22,371. If you kind of follow left to right on your screen along the chart. Now, we take that 10% deviation factor and we come up with a 10% average of 2,237 people. Now, we take that number and we divide it in half. Why do we divide it in half? Because we take that divided by 2 number, which is 1,119. We subtract it from the average to get your low or your floor of that range. And then we add it to the average to get your ceiling or the high range, which gives you 5 and 5 on either side of the range, which gives you that 10% deviation for that balance that we're trying to achieve for that fair representation. So with that calculation, you'll notice the green is in compliance and the amber or orange comes up as a non-compliant formula. So your low is 21,253 and your high is 23,490. That is your 10% deviation. And listen, in a perfect world, folks, let's say we had 40,000 people in Trenton. The idea would be, let's have 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. That would be a 1-to-1. But that's probably not practical or probable given the demographics and the topography and kind of the lay of the land in the city, if you will. So that 10% is the factor that's used to get to that or less to get to as close to that balance as possible. So if you notice, East Ward has 24,701, which is above the high of 23,490 by about 1,200 people. Again, people, not voters, it's people. North Ward and South Ward are in compliance. They fall in that range. But if you notice, the low is 21,253 and West Ward is 20,532, which is low by, I guess, about 700, probably about 700 people, if I'm doing my math right. And you'll see those same numbers of the current population is represented in orange by West Ward. There's your 2532. Your North Ward is 21,619. And Matt, if you don't mind, pan to the right. West Ward is 24,701. South Ward's in compliance. It meets the statutory requirements of compact and contiguous geometry or geography. It's bounded by a natural or man-made feature. And quite honestly, South Ward's compliant. We did not touch that. We didn't feel we needed to. However, as luck would have it, East Ward's high, West Ward's low, North Ward's right in the middle between the two, which also meets the 10% or less deviation. Therefore, we need to obviously impact part of North Ward to balance East and West. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody the history. That's what you're looking at today for the city of Trenton and where the reallocated 2020 census population numbers fall. So we came up with 3 scenarios for consideration by the Ward Commission.
Mr. Zielinski, before we go any further, do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Zielinski before we proceed?
Not from myself, no.
Okay. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, just to for the people who just arrived, this is the 2021 Ward Commissioners meeting to redraw the ward maps for the city of Trenton. Mr. Zielinski is speaking from Reynolds and Vernick, and he's going to start the presentation now with regard to the 3 proposed scenarios to alter the map. The map you see currently on the screen, that's the current map. I'm going to have all of this posted on the City of Trenton's website, elections website, in the coming days, so you'll have access then to all these documents. This is the current map. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Zielinski. Thank you.
No. You're the chair. Please do what you got to do. I'm fine. But I wanted the any of the public as well as the ward commissioners to see this is the current lay of the land, if you will, for the city of Trenton based on the 2020 reallocated population numbers and how they fall. So if you would, Matt, please go to alternate scenario number 1. So, and by the way, ward commissioners, all three scenarios,
This into the west, which I think is the best scenario.
I'm sorry, Anthony, what was that?
No, I was talking to Mary. I'm sorry. Sorry.
My bad. I just want to remind the ward commissioners as we're waiting for this map to load, all three scenarios fall within the 10% deviation or less of population. They meet all the Title 40 guidelines. However, there are some that are tighter than others, and you know, there are potential possible issues with polling places, but I'll point those out as we go. So you're now looking at scenario one. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you zoom into the chart in the upper left corner like you did before? Okay, folks. So under scenario one, we're considering taking existing, and again, what we're trying to do here is minimize the impact and creating any hardship on residents, current voters, in relationship to their polling place, and not disenfranchising any communities or neighborhoods. So we look at whole election districts whenever possible, because under Title 19, election district boundaries are bound by the same requirements as ward boundaries. That would be defined by a natural or man-made feature, a road, a railroad, a waterway, something you can physically see in the field, as we say. It also keeps like neighborhoods together, which is also a consideration for redistricting. So what we do is we look at the reallocated population numbers at the census block population level, which mimics a city block, which is good data, better data that they didn't even have 20 years ago. They now have had it since the last census. So we look at that in conjunction with the geography, with tax parcel information, with aerial imagery, so as to not disenfranchise anybody, not to create a hardship, and proceeding, again, on population only. So with that, scenario one, we're considering taking existing District 3 from the East Ward and put that into the North Ward. That would move 2,642 reallocated population from east to north. Then we would consider taking existing District 10 from the North Ward and putting that into the West Ward, which would then move 995 reallocated population into the West Ward. So
I have my hand up. I'm sorry.
Ms. Vaughn, we do have a public portion, and I will open it to the floor for questions if you just let Mr. Zielinski. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Councilwoman Robin Vaughn, who is actually the councilwoman for the West Ward. So, Mr. Zielinski, we will have a public portion, but she is actually a West Ward councilwoman, so we'll give her a couple questions.
I'm just speaking as a citizen today.
I definitely, I just wanted him to get through this part, and then I definitely want to hear your questions because you are an elected official in the city. So definitely, just give us 1 second, please. So, Mr. Zielinski, continue with the change.
okay. So if you notice, right now, and it's still colored blue, the District 10 in North Ward we're considering putting into the West Ward, which would then
I think it's
995 people. And again, like I said, Matt, at the beginning, because East and West Ward are not contiguous and North is in between, we need to kind of have this rolling shift, if you will, of population. Again, keeping it compact, contiguous, bounded by natural man-made features, and making sure that population is as balanced as possible. So if you would go back up to the left.
Yeah, and I just wanted to show them on the old map, just real quick.
Okay.
This is West Ward, this is the North Ward 10 that Mr. Zielinski is talking about on the old map. And this is the East Ward 3 that Mr. Zielinski is talking about. And then on the new map, he has them pretty much still highlighted. but this would be the 3 from the north that goes into the east, and this would be the 10th from the, I'm sorry, this would be the 3 from the east that goes into the north, and then this would be the 10th district from the west, or from the north, that goes into the west.
So with that, and perfect. If you notice now, if you look at the new numbers underneath WW, which is West Ward, Ward North, Ward East, those numbers in orange are a better balance. And if you go back up to the chart, Matt.
Yeah, they actually have them all here on the left. If you look on the screen, I have them zoomed in right now.
Yep, they're there too. Yep, very good. So we now are less than that 10% deviation. We're not displacing anybody. We're keeping hopefully like neighborhoods together, as well as the polling places are either in a new ward where they were combined in a same ward previously, or they're within 1,000 feet of the border of an adjacent ward, which is compliant with the Title 40 statute for polling places. And again, that's based on your current polling places as I know them. And if you look, we now would have 22,059 in East Ward, which falls between your range, 23,266, 22,633, and then 21,527, keeping it compact, contiguous, and natural or man-made delineations. There's actually 2 other scenarios we can show, but this one would again take like existing districts, computing that reallocated population, and just kind of borrowing from east into north, and then borrowing from north into west to kind of get that balance across, and then the south would stay untouched.
Ms. Vaughn, did you have a question for Mr. Zielinski?
Yes, I do. Yes, so I'm Robin Vaughn. I live in the West Ward, Stuyvesant Avenue. And I'm concerned because you're extending out to, deeper in the West Ward, some of the more, how can I say it, blighted areas in that area that now the West Ward is being proposed to absorb. And I'm just curious, how come you didn't extend further, I would say south into the North Ward beyond Calhoun Street?
Well, ma'am, if you can wait for the other 2 scenarios, I have one that addresses that very issue.
Okay, so my question would be, again, and I hope you write it down, because again, you're extending and you're proposing that the West Ward absorb more of the blighted areas in that section, I believe. I was just trying to get online, because you should expand it so you could tell the audience what streets they are, because you can't see the streets.
Matt, if you could zoom in on scenario 1s, the streets are labeled, but you'll need to get in tight on the
District 16, I think that we're absorbing more, that you're extending into the District 6 was already, is it 10?
It's District 10, and it's Russell Avenue, Wiley Avenue, and Trent Street.
We're muted.
Yeah, so, yep, mm-hmm.
So it would be 10, North 10 we're considering for population only, not voters, to be pulled into West Ward.
Yeah, I know those neighborhoods very well. That's New Willow Street, Trent Street. That's part of Ingram Avenue over there by Grace Cathedral Church. Folks will know that area. So that's Donnelly Homes. So again, all of that's coming into, and those aren't the only streets there. The map is not really showing them all. I will go in and make a more comprehensive list so folks will really understand what streets they're proposing to bring into the West Ward. Now, if you go down further...
Okay, ma'am, we're going to go back to the 3
No, I just want to go down one. I just want to finish my statement.
I have
So
a
if you go
commissioner.
down,
Ma'am, I appreciate that. You'll have time. I have to go for the meeting, for their time.
I just
So
want to
this
go
is-
again.
I appreciate that,
I just-
ma'am. But
by the
ma'am,
time
we're going to have to get
I
back to
can
the
finish my
presentation.
sentence.
Ma'am, I'm the chairman of this meeting. We're going to go back to the presentation.
We're just having a meeting and getting public input.
Right, ma'am, but we went to you because you're an elected official, but
I'm not here as an elected official.
we're
today.
going,
As
we're
a
going,
citizen.
and we're going to reserve it for the rest for public comment.
Again, okay, so I'll know, so Kevin, Calhoun Street,
Thank you. Ms. Moyer, you had a question? Commissioner Moyer?
Yes, can I just have the number again, how many were taken from the east to the north?
One district.
We're taking, considering, again, under scenario 1, existing District 3 from the east ward and putting it into the north ward would be 2,642 reallocated people.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that also is in my email that I sent out to the ward commissioners, and I will complete this with a report at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please proceed, Mr. Zelinski.
Okay, so again, that's just scenario 1. It's only based on population. Why don't we go to alternate scenario 2? And while we're waiting for that to load, this
Calling this late. She doesn't want it.
again,
There you
as to minimize the impact on existing folks that live in the city, this is scenarios 2's numbers. And again, these are compliant within the Title 40 less than 10% deviation between any two wards. We are looking under scenario 2 to consider taking existing District 7 from the east ward, putting it into the north ward, which, Jill, that would be 2,243 reallocated population folks moving from the east into the north. Then conversely, for that balance that we're looking for, we're considering taking existing District 10, again from the north ward, and putting it into the west ward, which again would be that 995 reallocated population. So the east and north, or sorry, west and north would stay the same, but instead of, if you look, instead of District 3, that would stay in the east ward, and then we would consider looking at District 7 of the east ward and pulling that into the north ward. Again, to get that kind of rolling balance across those three. South would remain untouched. So again, 995 from Old District 10 north to west, and then 7 would be 2,243 going into the north, and then again, conversely moving over. If you zoom into the chart again, Matt, or you could keep, yep, the chart's fine. So this then would, east would be 22,458, 22,867, 22,633, and then 22,527. So they again fall within that less than 10% deviation.
Kevin, if I may,
Yes.
Anthony Conti.
Hi, Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, if I can be
Yes,
recognized.
sir. Absolutely, please.
Kevin, I'm looking at, and I'm very familiar with a lot of these.
Mr. Conti, we lost you. You're frozen screen on us.
Yeah, he's still frozen.
Yeah, he's having they're having an internet issue. We actually do have to wait for them to come back.
Yes. And again, while we're waiting for Anthony to come back online, yes, it does mimic the same scenario from alternate 1 with regards to north and west ward, but as opposed to the District 3, we would be looking at District 7 for that balance. They are compact and contiguous. My one concern here, though, is you're now moving another polling place into North Ward that was in East Ward. which resides currently in 7. However, it is within 1,000 foot, actually less than probably 100 feet to the boundary. But I like to keep that representation as far as polling places as even as possible. But the numbers are even tighter under this scenario than an alternate one if you're looking at pure population and that representation. It is bounded by existing election district boundaries, and the population numbers do work with a more balanced population spread between the 4 wards in Trenton City. And nobody's displaced. Boy, Anthony's frozen up pretty good. Anthony, if you can hear us, if you're talking, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to exit out and come back. If you just bear with us for a minute,
Sure.
folks, I appreciate it.
And I know we have another meeting on, in the new year, that border, that line that splits Calhoun Street. I think Shiloh Church is on the other side. So I would want to see that extended. I don't understand why we went more easterly, I believe, instead of going south. We have not extended that border, and I think that's more of a redevelopment district than going into, Trent Street and those areas.
I think once you see all 3 scenarios,
That on the record.
I think once you see all 3 scenarios, ma'am, it'll be. I think the 3rd scenario addresses your question, actually.
No, the line addresses my question. The line is there that splits Calhoun Street. The southern part, if you extend south, that border up beyond Shiloh Church, Shiloh Baptist Church, then that's more of the redevelopment zone than it is where you extend it and putting more blight into the West Ward. So I will be letting my constituents know that this is what's being proposed and see what type of input we get back from the residents of the West Ward, that we want this those areas to be pushed into our ward rather than more viable, valuable redevelopment property.
Well, definitely.
It's beyond, why not have all of Calhoun Street instead of splitting it across the line? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. I can definitely tell you any scenarios that are brought forth by the public with concerns certainly can be brought to the chair of the ward commission for consideration. And as a consultant and professional that was retained by the ward commission, I'm obligated to entertain any or all of that. My job here is to follow the statutes and the Title Code 40 to the letter, which I do, to make sure it's compliant. So if you bring forth a scenario to the ward commissioner and they ask me to see if it's compliant, I certainly will do that. That's what I'm obligated to do.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Mrs. Zelinski, you can proceed. Yeah, you can proceed, Mrs. Zelinski.
I guess we lost Anthony. So, like I said, I'll summarize this meeting from my standpoint, Matt, and submit it to you and the other ward commissioners. But if you would, please pull up alternate scenario 3. And okay, there we go. So what were... Okay, if you would zoom into the chart, Matt, up in the upper left as before. So one of the things that under scenario 3, and we'll zoom to the map in a second, but I wanted to, under scenario 3, we're considering taking existing District 3 from East Ward and putting it into the North Ward, which would move 2,642 reallocated population from East to the North Ward. Then considering taking existing District 8 from the North Ward, putting it into the West Ward, which would be 1,930 reallocated population. I like this one because if you look, folks, look at the population reallocated totals on the left. East Ward would now be 22,059. North would be 22,331. South would be 22,633, and West would be 22,462. Darn near down the middle with the population balance between the 4 wards. Again, nobody's displaced, and it still keeps, as far as the districts were concerned, those communities and neighborhoods together, just moving them. Again, we have to balance west and east. North is in between, and this one is by the numbers is darn near down the middle as far as a statistical standpoint with that fair balance between the 4 wards. This one really delivers. Again, polling places need to be looked at, but it is still in compliant with the title codes. If you do not have a polling place within a district or ward, but it is within 1,000 feet of the border of that said district or ward, it is in compliance unless there's an alternate. So I look at things like that. Nobody's displaced. And again, we're keeping already like districts that the residents and then under Title 19, the voters are used to within the city, and trying to keep those intact as to minimize any impact or hardship on the residents of Trenton City. So from a number standpoint, that really works. We leave 10 alone. It stays in the North Ward. We now pull in, we keep 6. We're pulling 8 into West Ward. And then if you go over to the east side, Matt, we're then considering 3 from the east and putting it in the north. So that would, you're actually looking at a combination of 1 and 3 to come up with this third scenario. So if you see the 8, now here again, you're looking at, well, that's a big chunk of the city. However, it's based on population. You don't have as many concentrated residents in District 8 of Old as you did in a more compact district such as 6 or 10. It's all based on population and density. But looking at West Ward would then pull in Old North 8, and then East 3 would go into North. South again would be left alone. So this one, from a number standpoint, I like because it gives you that best balance across the 4 wards in the city.
Mr. Conti, and I actually just, Ms. Corrigan, I just muted your phone at *6 to unmute, just for the, got a minute of feedback. Mr. Conti had a question, and I wanted to go back to Mr. Conti, if at all possible. Mr. Conti, and Ms. Moyer, you're going to have to dial *6 to unmute by accident. I'm sorry, not Ms. Moyer, Ms. Corrigan.
Hear us now?
Yeah, you can hear us. Mr. Conti had a question before we got cut off.
Hello? Can you hear us now?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We just happen to be in this beautiful building that the county accommodated for us. That's all we hear. It's so beautiful here. Nothing works. Anyway, Kevin, do you take into consideration and I don't know the numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But looking at the map, I mean, what you're telling me, what you just discussed, actually, scenario number 3, actually makes sense numbers-wise. But if you look at District 3, which is already attached to West 6, I don't know the population there, but I think it would, geographically, it looks like it would make more sense instead of disturbing the entire downtown area and taking it away from the Mill Hill area. I think, well, emotionally, if anything, and geographically, I would like to see that remain intact because a lot of new development activities kind of like really on the brink of happening around in that area. So it's about promoting the downtown area. I don't know how this would affect that at all, if it does it at all, but it looks, looking at the map, if you could just make the numbers kind of tweak them around a little bit, even if they aren't as closely as balanced as the scenario that we're looking at.
Understood.
Because we all know we had that little bit of flexibility, but I would rather see District 3 considered moving it over because it's right contiguous to District 6.
I agree, Anthony, and 6 would stay alone, 8 would stay in north, and then we would consider pulling 3 into the west ward. I believe the numbers were on the high side, but we'll rerun it. And absolutely, from a geometry or geographic standpoint, for compact and contiguous, I concur with what you're saying. Only because I want to do everything that we possibly can consider to enhance the possibilities of the Trenton downtown area really exploding in new development somehow. I don't want to. Oh, no. I talked to Mr. Conlin after our last meeting about that, and pretty much in the next 10 years or beyond, the city of Trenton sounds like it's going to go through a transformation. So it's exciting to hear about, and I totally agree with you. I want to say I think we ran District 3 and the numbers spiked outside the range, but that doesn't preclude us. Again, my first pass is let's try to minimize the impact and again, not disfranchise anybody, keep it compact and contiguous. I want to say that 3, the numbers went over, but that doesn't mean then we couldn't look at the district and then modifying it based on the census block level. Whereas if you notice the election line north of 3 in North Ward, that line may have to move, but then that falls under Title 19 that we would deal with under the second phase of this. So,
for districts, correct?
Under districts, correct. That's based on.
Because as you can see, District 3 looks like it's densely populated with more residential areas.
Oh, it's
than
dense.
the downtown area. So
yes.
If you took the northern top part off and kept that up in the north, that might be doable. Just close up 3 a little closer somehow. I would rather see that scenario if you can make it work.
I'm retained by the ward commission. You're a ward member, so I'm obligated to entertain that. I certainly will. We have considered it, but this is our first of 2 meetings. Running that number, I believe, was on the high side, but that doesn't preclude us from then going down to the census block level and considering that. But I do like it from a demographic standpoint, from a geography standpoint. 3 would be better option than 8. But if you notice, look at the land size or the area size of 8, which I believe that has 2,600. I'm sorry, that has 1,930 people. When we were looking at District 3 in Scenario 1 from east to north, that had 2,642, and it was a third of the size, just to give people perspective on densities versus.
Yeah, it is dense there, but again, District 8 is basically our downtown area.
Right, and if you want to leave it in North Ward and consider 3, I will certainly do that. I'm obligated to do so. However, I believe I could not take the entire district if memory serves. We did run that scenario.
That makes sense. That makes sense. We may have to take a third of it off. So that's okay.
We'll look at it. Absolutely. We can look at it, and I will do so. We made a note.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Zelinski, please proceed.
Those are the 3 scenarios based on, again, minimal impact, not displacing anybody, considering polling places, and utilizing existing districts and or ward boundaries to minimize impact. So those were the three scenarios that are all statutorily compliant. They meet the requirement of less than 10% deviation. Scenario 3, from a pure number standpoint, based on population, hits the mark down the middle of the other two as well. But that concludes our three scenarios that are compliant. We have made a note with regard to the concerns brought that we will investigate, such as District 10 and North Ward and pulling that into West Ward, as well as the North 3 and 8 that Mr. Conti just raised. We will look at that and look at the numbers. I will tell you, we can make anything work. However, we would then have to drill down to the census block number, which we're certainly ready to do. But then I want to make sure, again, we do not disenfranchise anybody. We keep everybody together, and there's no disparity within the numbers. I believe I did not get any feedback with regard to 7 or 3 of East Ward between those two and the North Ward. I think that's okay. If I recall, so far, it's really between the North and West Ward that we need to look at, that was raised by one of the residents as well as Mr. Conti, and we will investigate that. But at this point, those are the three scenarios that we prepared and presented to the Ward Commission, and that pretty much concludes my presentation.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, ma'am. We'll get to public portion in 1 second.
Okay.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Zelinski? Okay, seeing none, we're going to proceed.
I did, sorry.
Ms. Moore, go
sorry,
ahead, please. Yes, ma'am.
So, Kevin, moving forward with these other two scenarios, or other two, I guess, advice from Mr. Conti and Ms. Vaughn, when would we be seeing them?
Well, I could have those prepared for next week. What I'd like to get from the commission today, if we could, is if we can narrow down between the three scenarios what the objectives are by the Ward Commission for me to prepare and investigate and run numbers, again, under the Title Codes 40 or Title Code 40. It seems to me that I believe taking District 3 from east and putting it in the north seems to be the consensus for most folks, if I'm reading the room correctly. And it seems like leaving 10 in North Ward and considering either 8 or 3 from the north into the west is also that scenario between those two wards that the Ward Commission would like me to investigate to see what, narrowing it down to 1 or 2 maps for the next presentation. If I'm correct in my interpretation, that's the way
I have one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the floor to the public so we can actually hear from the rest of the public, and then we'll go back to consideration. This way we have everybody's input before we start narrowing it down, because somebody from the public may have a different perspective. And that being said, I am going to go back to our elected official from the West Ward, who is here as a private citizen of her own accord, Ms. Robin Vaughn. Ms. Vaughn, you have 3 minutes to get your questions and or statements out. Thank you, Madam.
Yep. I just want to quickly say, I believe it was Mr. Conte who had questions about pulling in a percentage of District 3 in the North Ward into the West Ward, and I concur with that. And that's the borderline that I see that splits half of Calhoun Street between West and North currently. And if that line could be expanded into District 3, perhaps not all of District 3, but certainly a portion of it, I would be happy with that. And lessen the extension over to can you pull the photo back up? I think is District, the North Ward that's being proposed in the North Ward. District 10, yes. I think that we should lessen the proposal of pulling in District 10 into the north, into West Ward, and think more of pulling District 3 into the West Ward. And that's my position. And I would definitely share that with my neighbors and my constituents as well. And I totally concur with that. I think that that would be an enhancement for the West Ward and for the city of Trenton as a whole, for not only for redistricting and ensuring civic engagement and not to disenfranchise, but to also just enhance the overall our ward and voter participation and et cetera. So that's what I would propose as well. Extend that border up to District 3 and decrease it in District 10. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go, Ms. Moore, did you have another question? I just wanted to, while your hand is still up.
No.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jeffrey Laurenti, you're being recognized. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, hi, Jeffrey Laurenti, 464 Hamilton Avenue in the East Ward in Trenton. And one of these scenarios puts my neighborhood, my district, into the North Ward, which, you know, on the surface of it would not be ideal. I've considered myself part of the East Ward for the 58 years that we've had these ward boundaries. I'd like to ask, what is the body count of the other election districts in the East Ward that are contiguous to the north, District 1, District 2, whether those are so hopelessly large that they could not be considered for attachment to the north as part of this reshuffling to get this West Ward up to population equality. And I first of all value the consultant's priority on maintaining election district lines. And if you're going to split any election districts, as chairman of the Board of Elections, Conti, has suggested, since many of these were only in the past decade consolidations of two separate districts, for historical comparison purposes, one might try to find those and follow those old lines. While party is not relevant in Trenton, race and ethnicity are, and I wonder if under these various scenarios you all have calculated what the percentage of the live bodies being moved from one ward to another are who are African American, those that are Latino, and those that are other. Are we possibly changing the demographic of one ward or another in a way that might be legally suspect?
If you want me to address that, Matt, to answer your question, getting back to your original question, sir, the East 1st and 2nd District, those are challenges because you have the railway there, which is a man-made boundary or feature, if you will, that is a natural divide between the East and the North Ward. So I remember that was a challenge navigating that 10 years ago, for lack of a better word. So that boundary we felt would be a hardship to try to pull people across there, versus where it's not as much when you go further south within the city. We certainly can look at that again, but that railway has been a natural boundary that at the last Ward Commission did not want to navigate or
although it did by moving Trent Center from the East Ward, which is on the east side of the rail line, into the North Ward. So it's been done.
It's been done, exactly. It's been done, and that was after due diligence to where, you know, the numbers, you know, as population moves, to keep that balance creates challenges. So I remember that vividly. That's as far as we went, and then going more north, they wanted to leave that alone. Again, those numbers were presented. That's the way the commission went. I certainly can look at that again, but that's why we preserved that the way it is and did not look at those numbers. Certainly I can do that. We did look at 3. We did look at 7. I can look also at 5. I did not want to, but we can look at those again. As far as ethnicity, we do look at that. I would look at that even further if we were to go down to the census block level. Right now, that's why we try to, again, to minimize that impact, we try to keep whole districts together based, again, those are based on registered voters, but Title 40 is based on populace. So we try to keep those whole districts intact and move them because it keeps those neighborhoods, those communities intact and move them as a whole. Once we get into the census block level, then we start, like we potentially could cut East 3 in half, take half into North and leave the other half alone. Then I would really drill down into the ethnicity and demographics portion of the census for that, and then run it past the Ward Commission to make sure that we're not creating a further hardship in that regard. But
I think it was North 3 that
if that's a
Anthony
consideration
was
brought to
suggesting
the
be
Ward Commission,
divided.
we can definitely entertain it.
No, it was North. He is correct. It is North 3, not East 3. East 3 would actually be, in this last scenario, would become part of the North Ward, the East 3 here. What he was
around
talking,
the heart of Old Chambersburg, Butler Street.
I
And
got
such,
you.
but-
And I see.
right.
So the streets over there are, let's just zoom in on that map a little bit. So the East 3 that would be moving to the West Ward under this scenario is Hanford, Chestnut, Hamilton, Benton, exactly what he's talking about. You got Elmer Street here, Butler Street. So yeah, this is definitely,
It's the St. Joachim's Columbus Park area. Right.
so, okay, they're considering moving this in its entirety over to the north. Here would be where they're proposing actually, right now, this third scenario takes 8 as the downtown district here and moves 8 into the West Ward. Mr. Conti has actually suggested taking a larger part of 3, splitting that off into the West Ward and then moving the election line down, and I guess incorporating that into 11, or somehow should throw the numbers off by much. That's the 3 that they're actually talking about amending. In the East, this
Right,
3.
We would leave 8 in North and then a portion of
Correct,
3.
correct. In lieu of 8, you'd be cutting 3 into a section and moving part of that into the West, leaving this in the North. But this 3 is one of the proposals to go into the East. I think there's actually a consensus, and we'll get there in a minute, for a lot of people for actually Mr. Conti's plan here, but we'll go to the poll, the commissioners. I want to go through the rest of the public. Mr. Laurenti, did you have any more questions, sir?
Well, only to ask with North 3, if one goes back, because I think within living memory, the current North 3 was composed of what had been 2 separate districts, and maybe if one can see what that district line was, bingo, you have a pre-existing kind of line for division. But I don't know what it is.
Since we're connected, it's still going.
And again, Mr. Laurenti, for Title 40, we need to take the population.
Right.
So when you say previous election districts, and I actually have some memory about that from 10 years ago, we have to look at the populace, reallocated populace, to balance the residents between the 4 wards. Then based on Title 19 criteria, we then look at registered voters, the mean of 750 cast ballots in last 2 general elections. And then if that's lower than 250, we consider consolidation. If it's higher than 1250, we consider subdividing. So within that new ward boundary and whatever breakup happens of the old North 3, we would then have to look at, it may be as easy as pulling the remainder into North 11, or we might have to do yet a new district within North of the remainder from whatever's left over from 3. So those are things, again, our priority for the ward commission are under a 30-day mandate that they have to adopt a new ward map by mid-January of 2022, which is less than a month or about a month from now. And then in March, we then look at Title 19 criteria for what impacts are on the election districts from this rewarding process. So again, Title 40 is population, Title 19 is registered voters. So I'm going to keep everything focused on the ward process at this time. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Laurenti. Ms. Sherry Garrett.
I apologize, Mr. Collins. I didn't realize my hand was up. I'm just listening.
Oh, you good? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, do any members of the public wish to be heard right now or have any comments on the three proposals or have some of their own comments? Okay, that being said.
Hello, Mr. Collins.
Yes. Mr. Harrison, I hear you.
Councilman Harrison.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just got on. I was tied up on my state job. Could you tell me the scenarios again for East? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, Mr. Zielinski, Mr. Harrison is actually the East Ward council member. So if you could actually just go over with him real quick, and I'll bring the maps. So Mr. Harrison, I think you're on your phone. Can you see the maps?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so this is scenario number 3. I'll go through them as he calls them out again, just for a quick review.
So if you want to, Matt,
I'll zoom in on the East.
We can go zoom in on the East. We can go in reverse, if you will, since you have scenario 3 up.
Yep.
Mr. Harris, we have 3 scenarios proposed. I'm sorry.
It's Joseph Harrison. Thank you.
Oh, Harrison. I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. Right now, under Title 40, we need to achieve a balance of less than 10% deviation by population between any 2 wards in any town or municipality, in this case, Trenton being in Mercer County. So we try to lessen the impact of disenfranchising any neighborhoods or communities and least amount of impact on the residents of Trenton. To meet that compliant less than 10% deviation, we found East Ward and West Ward are either too low and too high. North and South meet in the middle as far as being within that 10% range. Of course, as Murphy would have it, not the governor, by the way, Murphy's Law, I meant.
Okay.
North Ward's in between East and West. So there's some impact to North Ward in order to get that balance. South is fine, and we would like to leave that one alone. To do that, in this scenario, taking existing East 3, election District 3, and moving that into the North Ward in conjunction with moving some other folks from North into West achieves that balance. And under scenario 3, East 3 would then become part of North Ward, potentially.
We would take this and put it into the warrant. And then the rest of this in the 6 and 4.
So that is one proposed scenario for consideration by the ward commissioners. So if you go to alternate 2, Matt.
Pretty big of workload.
So if you zoom in on the same area, Mr. Harrison, when you look at the ward line between North and East, we leave 3 in the East and then consider looking at existing East 7 and pulling that as an entire district, keeping them compact and contiguous as they are now, and moving them into the North Ward. So your new ward boundary would then wrap around East 7 and pulling that into North Ward.
Excuse me, Kevin, if I may, it's Anthony
Yes.
Conti, Mr. Collin.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please, Mr. Conti.
Kevin, at this point, I'm looking at the map here, and I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Laurenti's comments about disturbing the entire District 3, because it's always been obviously part of the makeup of that part of town, because we're kind of really stretching it. If you look further north up in the East Ward, District 2, 4, and 6, a lot of the streets there, I realize there are railroad tracks there, and Olden Avenue could also become a natural boundary. But if we were to juggle some numbers around between District 2, 4, and 6 to create a balance, we may be able to take some of that off the top end of the east and put it right into the north, which they are contiguous right there. I realize that there are railroad tracks, but we have done that before. And I believe that would, because a lot of the streets are already named North Logan, North Cook, there's a whole bunch of North Walter Avenue. And so it's kind of a natural partnership, in my opinion. But if you can take a look at that, I would really appreciate that, to see 2, 4, and 6, if we can move those numbers around to create sort of a soft imbalance with some of the numbers. I think that would be satisfactory to a lot of people, from what I'm
And
hearing.
then leave 3 and 7 in east.
Yes. 7, I don't think, 7 cannot go into the North Ward. It's just going to be sticking out there like a sore thumb. I don't see that happening. You're going to displace a lot of people. That's the main, I realize we're talking about population, but you're disturbing a whole voting district over there at Trenton Central High School. I just can't see that. That bothers me. So if I go up to 2, 4, and 6 again, I would look up there.
I will tell you, Matt, please zoom in on 2, 4, and 6 of the East Ward and 1, that area.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if you see the orange line between Ward North and Ward East, right along those lines that represent the railroad tracks, you will be carving into immediately adjacent to on the east side of the railroad tracks. The population's not high. I would really carve into, like you said, 2, 4, 6, and 1 to pull that over. Again, the directive I had from the Electoral Commission was to leave that boundary alone. That's what I followed. I certainly, and I'm obligated to entertain that, and I will, if that's the will of this. But I will tell you, I will come into 4 and 6 as well as 2 and 1 to get the population to work, because immediately east of the railroad, the population's not high. There might even be zeros in there as far as population counts. I would have to check the census.
I agree. So if we go into the top end of that, we're also going to be consolidating voting districts, which becomes a plus.
Absolutely. And if that's the will of the commission, I'm obligated to do it, and I will do so.
It's a suggestion for, if you can take a look at that, instead of disturbing 7 and 3.
Okay. So if I can just to recap to this point, Matt, I think we want to leave 7 and 3 in East Ward, and we want to leave.
Yeah, that we'll get to. This is more public comment.
Okay. I'll let you recap it then. That's fine. Okay.
We'll get to the commissioner's consideration here in a minute. I just want to get some of the more of the public comment. Yes, ma'am.
This is Natalia Armstrong.
Ms. Armstrong,
I'm on the phone.
Yes, ma'am. You're recognized.
Yeah, I'm on the phone. Thank you. So I'm unable to see this presentation. Several of us we were unsuccessful in finding a live link to join. Will this presentation be available for us to see?
And just to let you know, everybody, there is a second meeting. This is not the only meeting. There is a second meeting. It is at 6 p.m. on January 10th. These presentations will be posted on the Trenton City website. And they are available from my office. If you send me an email, I'd be happy to send all 3 proposals out. These proposals are going to be modified as we'll get to that portion here. We're not actually deciding on the actual selection of the map at this meeting. This is for the consideration phase. This is so you all can get your say. So, Ms. Armstrong, would you like to speak and be heard on what you would like to see?
I would have loved to, but I was only able to write down certain things as I couldn't see the presentation from the phone. So I'll reach out to your office. Thank you.
Thank you. And then once again,
Mr. Collins?
there will be a public portion on January 10th as well. Yes, Ms. Vaughn.
Yes, I just want to add to the record for Mr. Conte to include as a proposed, as a recommendation of a change as well. In addition to perhaps decreasing the borderline to District 10 and expanding in District 3, I'm looking at the map. I'm sorry, I brought it up myself and I can expand it on my computer at home. Can you also, because Calhoun Street runs all the way to the Delaware River, expand it into District 8? See, District 8, District 3, then you got that Calhoun Street border. I think that's a county road as well, it states. If you can move that border and, include some of those streets in the West Ward, District 3 and District 8, as opposed to District 10, but maybe we can do a combination of all three to make the numbers work. You follow, Mr. Connie? You see what I'm suggesting?
I see that, yes. I think Mr. Zielinski is going to take a look at that as he promised, and we'll see what he comes back with as far as helping the numbers work in that area.
Yeah, because initially to Mr. Zielinski, I requested 3, but then I looked at the map and I saw District 8 and Calhoun Street extending all the way down to the Delaware River, and you see West Front Street, and a lot of those lines used to be in the West Ward, I believe, some of those streets. So if we can look at that, a combination of 10, 3, and 8.
Please
When I
submit
think
that.
we go into District 8, we're going to be creating sort of like a peninsula going into the North Ward.
We actually already have a peninsula from the North Ward right now into the West Ward, and we actually have one from the North Ward into the border between the east and the south. So I think one of the scenarios, or all of these scenarios, actually eliminate parts of those peninsulas, because down in here, there's actually a peninsula that sticks out into the West Ward as part of this section right here currently, and that actually is being reclaimed by the West Ward and moved back in the north, because like I said, the current ward map has a peninsula sticking out here and a little thumb sticking out over here as well. And it looks like that thumb's staying there. This one looks like it's being absorbed back into the West Ward. And I think the more natural proposal, and I'll get to my comments here in a minute, but the more natural proposal I think falls down here someplace. But once again, we'll get to those comments. Ms. Vaughn, did you have any more comments?
No, I just want to make sure Mr. Zielinski understood what I'm recommending or proposing.
Just
3, 10, and 8.
Submit,
Thank you.
please submit your suggestion to the chair, and then he'll inform as a ward commissioner as to what he would ask me to do.
And ladies and gentlemen, your suggestions can be sent to me. My email is really easy. It's clerk, CLERK, at TrentonNJ.org. So your suggestions and comments can also be submitted to me at clerk@TrentonNJ.org. Real easy to remember. Do any other members of the public wish to be heard?
Yes, Mr. Collin.
Ms. Garrett, you are back. Which you have, it is 2:16. You have 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
It's not going to be long. I am going to email you. I just want to know also, could you get from Mr. Zielinski the different areas? I want to see the exact number in each one of these areas, like in each ward, under the numbers, how many in far as population or number of populated people in those areas and voters in those areas, so I can kind of do a calculation myself, please.
I'm not sure that's going to be part of the information packet to the public, but I'll see what I can do.
All right, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, any other members of the public wish to be heard? That being said, Ms. Garrett, the information should actually be available at the Census Bureau, but I'll see what I can get as part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, do any other members of the public wish to be heard? Okay, I'm going to close public portion for a second without the proposal and a direction for Mr. Zielinski to proceed from the commission. Any objections from the board for the commission?
No.
Mr. Conte, would you like to go first, sir?
I'm okay. I believe that Mr. Zielinski understands what we're kind of trying to accomplish here. I don't know if he can do that. I mean, we can accomplish anything, tweak some lines around. But if you can do your magic, I think that would be best. But going back to North District 8, I'm just very reluctant to disturb the Trenton downtown area as it is. That's the personal thing. So.
Ms. Corrigan?
Mr. Conti and I have been sitting here and discussing things, and I'm sort of in agreement with him. So.
Ms. Moore?
I also will defer to Mary Corrigan and the rest of the board. They have more experience. I do, though, on behalf of everyone with their recommendations. So you're saying all three of this, so Matt, I have a question for you. These three scenarios that you're presenting, they are going to be on your website, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna put the one.
Are the
Yeah,
alternate scenarios going up
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, when we get them, I'll put them up as well. And the members of the public can email me at that email address as well, and I'll be happy to send you the 3 PDFs. These are obviously going to change. These are the initial proposals, and I'll put, and I'll send them with the caveat that, that there are going to be some changes. These are not the final, and I don't want people to panic. We're going to have more proposals next week. With the commissioner's permission, I'll release them to the public so they can be prepared for it on January 10th. They'll also be on the City of Trenton's website. There is a sub-website under there called Elections. I will make sure that they go on there this week. It should be really easy to find. And I'd just like to make some comments myself. With regard to the moving 3 from the east, I absolutely agree that would be a rough pull for the neighborhood into the North Ward. However, with regard to 7, I think that is actually the more logical and the more natural of the 3, and I would like to see any of the scenarios incorporate that 7. 7, I believe, already votes with the North Ward at the same location. And I just want to confirm that. So that's Hedgepeth Wood, that's East 7 votes is Trent Center Apartments West. And in the North Ward as well, I believe one of the districts votes at that location. North 2 actually already votes at Trent Center Apartments West. They share, so there are components with the 7th district in the east already sharing polling places with the north, and I'd like that to be taken a look at as well, just to continue to share those polling places, because these two right here, 7 into 2, the natural barrier up here, if you can overcome it, I agree. As far as down here, I totally agree with Mr. Conti with his scenario for the 3rd. I think taking the 8th, especially with the changes that are proposed with the 8th, I think that's a big pull. I believe City Hall is actually in this scenario here. This is, I think, a much better scenario to pull this out, because this is a natural extension of the thumbprint that already sticks out from the north into the west. So reclaiming that, and then having that sort of reverse itself seems good with finding whatever natural barrier here you're able to cut it off with. And I think that would be the direction, Mr. Zielinski, that the board wants to see over here. I think you have agreement on that. And then I think the 2 scenarios over here are work out one with the upper part of the North Ward, and then the second part would be to work out one with the 7th, or a combination of the 7th and the 1st maybe, rather than the natural barriers that are opposed to here. I don't know if this is the highway. I have to take a look at it here, but I don't want to put anything where people who are walking have to cross, major highways or big impediments to go vote. That would just be a bad thing. Well, like I said, contingents of the 7th in the east already vote with the north at the same polling locations. That for me seems like a most logical continuation, because those voters, and really those voters in both of those places, there would really be very little difference, because they both go to the same polling place right now. That's just my 2 cents. So Mr. Zielinski, if you could work up, I guess the consensus among us is a scenario for not disturbing the 3rd. So something for up here using the upper part, if you can find a way to reasonably overcome this barrier, or the 7th, and then in combination with the scenarios for the 3rd and other scenarios that don't, I believe, include the 10th. For this, and I believe Ms. Vaughn also had mentioned maybe taking a part of the 3rd and the 8th, but those, you know what the rules are with regard to that. Any of the commissioners have any objection to those 3 or those general directions?
No.
No.
We'll see what comes back at us.
Yeah, we'll see what comes back at us, and then we'll go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. This is just the beginning. We have 30 days to finish this process. We will meet again with your considerations on January 10th. That we will have a vigorous and robust public portion for again, I'm sure, and we'll have some more scenarios. Please check the Trenton City website. If you, for some reason, cannot get them up there, please contact my office. I'd be happy to email the maps to you. clerk@trentonnj.org. Thank you for coming today. Once again,
Mr. Conlon, real quick, is there a
Yes.
potential of more meetings being added? This is Ed Gittens from Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson's office. I know there's a minimum of 2 scheduled. Is there a potential of any more public meetings being added?
I don't think so at this time, but I'll talk to the other commissioners about it to see. The 10th would probably be the last meeting, only because the deadline is so tight. We had the Christmas holiday fall smack dab in the middle, and I also have 2 city council meetings this week and the 2 city council meetings the 4th and the 6th, which sort of ties my time up for being able to prepare those. So I think...
And Mr. Collin, that's at 6 p.m., correct?
That is at 6 p.m. And we did one during the day for the people who work at night. We're doing one at night for the people who work during the day. And that'll be 6 p.m. on January 10th. Anyone who wants to spread the word, please email my office. I will email you the link, and you can email it out as many times and as many places and as many people as you would like. That being said, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Conti to adjourn. I have a second by Ms. Corrigan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We see you. Mr. Jennings, would you remain behind for 1 second, please? Because
Yes,
I want to swear you in real quick. Even though the meeting is adjourned, I can still swear you. If you don't mind raising your right hand.
Hold on a second. Somehow my camera's not working. Oh, there it is.
I don't need your camera. I just need your voice.
Oh, there he is.
Let me just bring the 1 second. Bring the oath up, if you don't mind. If you don't mind repeating after me, I, Martin Jennings,
I'm Martin Jennings.
do solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
all the duties
all the duties
of a Trenton Ward Commissioner,
of a Trenton Ward Commissioner.
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of New Jersey,
and the state of New Jersey.
and I will bear true allegiance to the same.
I will bear truly to what? I'm sorry?
True allegiance to the same,
I will give true allegiance to the same.
and the governments established in the United States. Sorry, it's the state
And the
statute.
government established in the United States
And
the state of
in
New
this
Jersey.
state,
And in the
under the
state,
authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much. You were sworn in as a ward commissioner. Sorry I didn't see you arrive earlier. I will send the oath, actually email the oaths out if you could just sign and return, and I'll put them on the record. I appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned at 2:27 p.m. We thank you for coming. Once again, there will be another meeting on January 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m. If you would like the meeting link, please email me at clerk@trentonnj.org. There was a newspaper advertisement, but you can come to the City of Trenton's website. The link should be up on elections. I will verify that this afternoon, and we will go from there. I look forward to seeing you all on January 10th. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.